You don't have to be an excitable boy to enjoy the views from the On Fek Circle. Presented by JFtC.com and the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. You're probably watching live on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. Maybe you're on its Facebook page. Maybe you're on Twitter at Jays from Couch. Wherever you are, thanks for checking us out. And lucky for you, this misadventure is not the only programming Jays from the Couch presents on its YouTube channel. Coming up on Thursday, there is Sunny Side of the Dome, hosted by Karen Suter. It is the perfect balance between Blue Jays fandom and in-depth, spot-on baseball analysis. That's every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on all of the said media outlets we talked about. And of course, the podcast that birthed all things Jays from the Couch. There is the Jays from the Couch radio podcast hosted by our senior editor, Sean Doyle. It is never a boring show. We cover a variety of topics. The debate is lively. The laps are handy. That's every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on the YouTube channel. I am the Feckless Wonder, Steve Fek, your host of the On Fek Circle. I guess I should point out that it's every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, that all this foolishness comes streaming at you. If you miss it, there's archives, at the YouTube channel, at the Jays from the Couch Facebook page. You can probably find links on Twitter. And of course, with the podcast, you can go to Apple, Google, Spotify. If it's a legitimate podcast provider, Jays from the Couch is there. If it's not there, delete it right away. We've got a lot of things to talk about. Of course, obviously opening up a series with the first place Boston Red Sox. Who'd have thunk it? I don't think anybody could have imagined that the Red Sox would be in first place beyond their first series of the year, really, based on how they did last year, based on them having to go out and acquire players to fill holes. Imagine that. A proactive general manager that saw holes on the roster and especially in the pitching staff and made sure he filled them. Perchance to dream that happens in Toronto, but it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will. There's also two segments that we always have every week. This Tweak in Baseball, you want to stay tuned for that, because after I rant and rave like I usually do in the beginning, it's going to be an interesting examination of what Nate Pearson's future should be with the Blue Jays. Should he be a starter? Should he be a leverage reliever? I'll let you know here in a little bit. And at the end, Blue Jays Way, always some kind of offbeat or interesting point of the culture of the Blue Jays and being a Blue Jay fan. I want to start off, thoughts and prayers go out to former Jay Kevin Pillar. He was hit square in the face. I mean, there was nothing protecting him with a 94-mile-an-hour fastball last night in Atlanta. He has multiple nasal fractures, so obviously he's on the IL. He'll be out for a while. It has to be serious because he's not even going back to New York to be seen. He's seeing surgeons right now in Atlanta. So hopefully he ends up not worse for the wear. He's a tough competitor. I know Blue Jays fans have a little bit of acrimony for Pillar for some of the comments that he made, and not acceptable comments by any means, but still, I think they forget what a good player he was for the Blue Jays and that way he exited, and actually really he opened the door for his exit by making that stupid comment. But we certainly wish him all the best. I don't think anybody wants to see a guy get hit smack in the face. Well, maybe me, but I don't have anybody here that can throw 94 miles an hour and hit me in the face. But imagine the ratings. Imagine the shares. If somebody just threw a baseball in my face and my face exploded. Imagine that. I'm not against that. But, until we can secure somebody that can throw that hard, you have to just stare at this mug the way that it is. Another bit of news, Rafael Dolis, as expected, has been activated from the 10-day IL. Apparently his muscle injury has healed enough where he can go back to the into the bullpen, pitch in leverage situations. Now, that spot was made available when Nick Allgaier, somebody who's really established himself in his first couple starts at Buffalo/Trenton, was activated. And you would think that if you're going to go to the trouble of making a spot on the 40-man roster by moving somebody to the 60-man IL, that you'd actually use the guy. Here's the guy. He's not on the 40-man. You now have the clock starting as far as options go. Okay, we're not talking Nate Pearson, number one prospect here, but yeah, he obviously pitched well enough for Ross Atkins to say, you know what? We have to have him on our roster. We're not going to pitch him, but we need to have him on our roster. So typical Blue Jay roster management. And this goes back to the trading deadline last year. Oh, we're going to claim Daniel Vogelbach. Nope, we're going to get rid of him. We're not going to let him play for us at all, but we'll let him hit 8 home runs, drive in 20, 30 runs over the last 6 weeks of the season. We didn't really need that because we had an injured Rowdy Tellez, and we have the best players. We don't need other players. So we're going to just waive Daniel Vogelbach. And who can forget the great Joel Payamps experience where, we're going to claim him. We're going to DFA him about a week later. Oh, what? He's available again? Oh, we're going to claim him. This does not bode well for the people that say, oh, well, wait for the deadline. With the trading deadline, we have all these pieces. We have 8 of the top 100 prospects in baseball now, and we have all of this stuff we can do. That's great. In theory, I have several pensions waiting for me when I hit 65. Problem is, I'm 60. So that money does me no good now. So when I go to the bank and say, look, I'd like to buy a new car, a new house, but, I can't pay you for 5 years until my pension starts. I'm sure there'll just be offers and money just being thrown at me so I can take care of that business transaction. And that might be a bit of a dramatic stretch, but in essence, that's what it is. And that is why I'm not comfortable with Ross Atkins' ability to get the team over the final hurdle into serious contention. Did he do a great job with the minor league system? Yes, he did. Ben Cherington helped a lot. Excuse me. But see, I'm all choked up. I'm all verklempt when I think about Ross Atkins. And just an update from a couple of shows ago. We threw out the challenge that I would quit the On Fek Circle. And I would quit writing about the Blue Jays for JaysFromTheCouch.com if Ross Atkins actually made an impact move before the deadline. Now, I felt comfortable enough knowing he would never do that because, but still, I thought I had to put something on the line, but so does Ross. So I invited him, since I have accused him of being a rodeo clown, where he basically just tries to distract people from what the real problems are by dancing and having funny clothes. He's got that stupid beard now. So he's basically a rodeo clown. And I said, if you don't make the move, Ross, which I don't think you're gonna before the deadline, you need to come on the On Fek Circle in full rodeo clown regalia. Now, I'm a little taken aback and shocked. I have not heard back from the Blue Jays. I have not heard back from Ross Atkins. And while I half expect to hear from Blue Jays and Ross Atkins' legal representation for basically slander and libel, I haven't heard yet. So keep tuning in. You never know. Maybe someday to open the show, we'll have Ross here in his makeup and distracting you from the fact that he once again did not do his job. We're playing the Red Sox, the first place Red Sox. The Blue Jays with a sweep, they're in first place. And perhaps with the Red Sox in the rearview mirror, that would be a sign of things that potentially could come. But bottom line is the Red Sox are still in first place right now. And something that I've heard multiple times, not just behind the scenes at Jays from the Couch, but on social media and just general people talking, the Red Sox are in first place. Alex Cora is a proven cheater. Therefore, Alex Cora and the Red Sox are cheating, and that's why they're in first place. To that, all I can say is, wah, my team's not beating the Red Sox, so they have to be cheating. It's not the fact that we don't have enough starting pitchers. Stop it, Blue Jay fans. Just stop it. Okay? The Red Sox are in first place for real reasons. They lead Major League Baseball. All 30 teams, they are number one in runs scored, hits, doubles, slugging percentage, and OPS. And for good measure, they're second in batting average. They are fifth in home runs. They're sixth in on-base percentage. So they're obviously doing something right. And when you look at their starting rotation, which basically Eduardo Rodriguez was out all last year, he's about the only holdover. They went out and they got starters that throw more than 70 pitches, that go more than 5 innings, and their starting rotation ERA is actually about a half run better than the Blue Jays starting rotation. And the Blue Jays have some pretty solid starters. Hyun-Jin Ryu, who goes tonight against Rodriguez. You've got Robbie Ray, who has been terrific. Steven Matz has had his moments. And then it's the cast of, characters from the Atkins innings diet. But the Red Sox have earned being in first place. Did Alex Cora cheat? Yes, he did. Did he have to pay the price for it? Yes, he did. And bottom line is, don't be jealous because he figured something like that out. Now, mind you, banging on trash cans, if teams didn't pick up on that before the playoffs, who's really more culpable for blame? It's the other teams that didn't pick up on that or didn't make a stink or a loud enough stink or a persistent enough stink before that. I'm all for. Now, I'm absolutely a no steroid guy. If you tested positive or you were in the Mitchell report, you do not get into the Hall of Fame. You do not get kudos. You are a cheater. That's taking additives and performance enhancers to make it better. If you're a pitcher like Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer, a multitude of big high power relievers, and you use Stickum or some kind of things where you can improve your spin rate, great. When you get caught, I don't want to hear you whine. You serve your suspension and say, okay, I knew, but too bad. I thought Gaylord Perry was tremendous, and he wrote a book, Me and the Spitter. So everybody knew he was throwing a spitball, but he really only threw it on a consistent basis for the first 5 or 6 years of his career. Once especially when he got traded to the American League, it was all theatrics, he wanted to throw the batters and get the opponents off thing where they made you think that you were cheating. That's fine. If you're willing to take the risk and get caught, okay. It's not an equipment change. It's not like a corked bat. Or it's not a performance-enhancing thing where it's steroids or the cream or whatever you want to say. This is finding a competitive edge by flirting around the edge of the rules. And sign stealing is the same thing. A little bit more blatant in the case of the Astros case. They paid the price. They lost first-round picks for 2 consecutive years. That sets an organization back big time. Especially a team that needs to start filling holes now that they're going to lose, now that they've lost George Springer and they're going to potentially lose Carlos Correa and other players. They paid the price. The Red Sox also paid a price. The people that were involved paid a price. So let it go. Okay. The fact that the Red Sox are ahead of the Blue Jays has nothing to do with 2017 or 2018. It has everything to do with them getting the job done on the field and making the aggressive moves in the offseason. So just stop. Okay, this week in baseball, we always try to pick one thing. We try to make it Blue Jays, centric whenever we can. This week is definitely Blue Jays centric, and it centers around Nate Pearson. I believe, if I was running the Blue Jays, I would go to Nate Pearson and say, from this day forward, now that you're at AAA, you are going to train and develop into, if not a closer, a late inning leverage reliever. And you don't necessarily have to have a closer anymore. If you've got guys at the back of the bullpen, that's great. And you're going to say, oh my God, Nate Pearson, he throws 100 miles an hour and he's our number one prospect. And he's supposed to be our number one rotation ace. He has the talent. Yes, he does. However, the injury bug keeps biting him. He's a big guy. His throwing motion looks smooth, but when you're throwing more than 100 miles an hour and you're throwing a 90 plus mile an hour slider and breaking pitch, you're going to have issues. What many teams have done over the course of history is to keep their big stud guys healthy, is convert them to relief and gain your benefit that way. It's my contention, and I'm sure people will lose their mind and send me nasty tweets and comments, which, by the way, you can do right now if you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. Send your nasty comment out now, and I'd be happy to reply and answer live here on the show. I always check back at the various sources for any comments that might come afterwards. But it's not a horrible thing, and it's not something that's never happened before. Okay, Nolan Ryan in 1969 and 1970 had more relief pitch appearances than he did starts for the Mets. The Mets had a loaded rotation, but we're talking Nolan Ryan here. When he did pitch in relief, he was fantastic. His command issues were cleared up. For whatever reason, he focused more as a reliever. Now, of course, he got traded to California. Then he went to Houston and Texas, and he had a Hall of Fame career as a starter. But in the beginning, when he was struggling, he actually paid more benefits to his team, the Mets, as a reliever. Rich Gossage. He was stubborn. I want to be a starter. I want to be a starter. And Chuck Tanner, because he came up with the White Sox, would give him the occasional start, and he would get hammered. He would get crushed. And eventually, because Chuck Tanner had a very coachable and open personality, known as a player's manager, eventually convinced Rich Gossage that his future was in relief. He led the American League in saves in 1996. In 1997, with Tanner gone, they gave in to Gossage. I'm sorry, 95 was he led the league in saves. And 76 was the year he went back to a starter, and he was just clubbed. He was knocked all over the place. 77, he went to Pittsburgh, went back to relief, piled up a bunch of saves, went to the Yankees, and then the story is complete. Dominant reliever, even with one pitch. He only threw a fastball, really. I mean, I know he probably had a changeup and breaking stuff, but he just threw fastballs and said, here you go. When you have that kind, and back in the day, he had one of the premier fastballs, as Nate Pearson does now. So would it really be horrible for Nate Pearson to become a leverage reliever? Keep in mind, too, that it's easier to manage a player's injury proneness, if that's a word, in a relief role than it is as a starter. Because you are limiting the amount of time he's going out and firing seeds to an inning, maybe two. You're not having to worry about using all of your pitches in that little thing. You use your fastball, your 100-mile fastball, to set up your devastating slider and your breaking pitch. Because if you're looking for the fastball, fine, you can sit on it. If you're throwing 100 miles an hour, there's going to be very few people that are going to be able to line that ball out of the park. Okay, so it's not all that far-fetched. Let's go further in history. We'll get a little bit closer. I realize that I'm an old guy. So for you, you're like, yeah, I think I've heard of Nolan Ryan, and Rich Gossage. Yeah, I think I've seen him in a history book, but let's move a little closer. John Smoltz. John Smoltz, Tommy John surgery, missed an entire season in 2003. 2004, he came back, and they kind of nursed him along in relief. He adapted to that role so well that over the next 5 years, he was saving 40, 50 games a year. He adapted his stuff, similar to Pearson's stuff. He didn't throw as hard as Pearson, but certainly his slider and his breaking stuff was pretty devastating. Went into the role fine. And then once the Braves got themselves a closer, Smoltz, having built up his endurance and coming back from Tommy John, and more importantly, filling what the team needed him to do, went back to the rotation. Had a nice, strong end to his career. Chris Sale was a devastating reliever. Eventually, as he developed his command, they moved him into the starting rotation, and he became an all-star and Cy Young caliber pitcher. More recently would be Andrew Miller, former #1 pick of the Tigers. He was just brutal as a starter. Okay, and he pitched for some really good Tiger teams. It's brutal. Went to the Marlins, got worse. And not just because he was with the Marlins, he just got worse. Eventually, they caught on, said, well, we're going to move him into relief. And within 2 or 3 years, he was demanding big contracts. He was pitching leverage innings in Boston, in Cleveland, in St. Louis. So it's not out of the question to take a pitcher with supreme talent and 2 or 3 truly devastating pitchers pitching when you get it over the plate. It's not out of the question to have them be a reliever. Nate Pearson can be just as valuable as far as actual games won, not projected games won, not expected WOBA, Manitoba, woe is me stat, nothing like that. He can be as valuable to the Blue Jays long-term over the course of his career as he could be at the front of the rotation. Given the pitchers that are already starting to come out, Alek Manoah, Simon Woods Richardson, they all say they're top of the rotation guys. Let's try to preserve Nate Pearson before he loses his confidence or continues to have injury woes because he's trying to pitch as a starter and build up the endurance to be a starter. Make him a reliever. And that's my This Tweak in Baseball for this week. But it's also for 2021 and 2022 and 2023. Right on until either they sign him to a long-term contract once he becomes a free agent, or until you trade him as a valuable commodity, high-impact leverage reliever to ensure your future even more going forward. So that's my This Tweak in Baseball. The last segment is always something called Blue Jays Way, and I try to tie in something about history or the culture of being a Blue Jays fan. Today, I sort of want to talk about Marcus Simeon's comments last night. And he was quoted, and I'm not saying he was wrong by saying what he said, but he came out and said, when you go on the road, you may get booed and no one cheers for you. But it seems like that's how it is in Dunedin, too. There's lots of fans of other teams. Personally, I don't think playing here is a relief, or whatever you want to call it. I just enjoy living in the Tampa Bay area, I guess. Now, I'm not sure how well that's going to go over with Tampa Bay Ray fans, with Toronto Blue Jays fans. But I mean, I guess I made the Freudian slip at the Tampa Bay Rays, but because that's the problem with the Tampa Bay Rays. They draw when the Yankees are in town, or the Tigers or the Indians or the Red Sox. Those Northeasterner snowbirds that move down and retire in the Tampa Bay region, they go and root for their teams. They're not going to become a Tampa Bay Rays fan just because they're living there now. They're going to root for the team that they rooted for growing up. So to a degree, it's a little unfair for Simeon to say that, because the people that are residing in Pinellas County and the Tampa Bay region may be from Philly or may be from one of the northeastern cities. So you can't fault them for rooting for the team that they grew up with. But what makes it interesting to me is that there seems to be a history of the Toronto Blue Jays fan base taking things personally. I don't know whether it's an inferiority complex or whatever it would be, but also maybe glossing over, if they like the player, maybe glossing over what they said and say, well, it's not that bad. Now, the absolute worst comment ever came from my high school mate, Mark Lamangelo, who had a really nice beginning of his career for the Astros. He got traded to the Blue Jays. He wasn't very happy. His first reaction when he was interviewed by the press was, do they even speak American in Canada? Not a good way to start your Toronto Blue Jays career. Now, in defense of Mark, he was an athlete. He was not National Honor Society. He's from New Jersey and the Jersey Shore. You expect some stupidity out of that. I mean, that show Jersey Shore is sort of a stretch, but there are people like that. Mark pitched in the National League, so made regular trips to Montreal, where they speak French predominantly. Even though Canada is supposed to be a bilingual country, they speak French. And the Québécois kind of enjoy the fact that even though they understand English and can speak it, they're not gonna, because they're like Québécois. So to a degree, he had a little bit of backup there. But, I don't know. Now, if this comment, and we don't know what the fallout is yet, but if this comment had come out and Bo Bichette said it, or Vladdy Guerrero said it, or Kevin Biggio said it, you might be able to get away with it. Because it's Bo, it's Vladdy, it's Kevin. We'll have to see what that is. And the Blue Jays fans don't have a great history with guys that come out. And again, I'm not forgiving what Kevin Pillar said, but his fate was sealed when he said the stupid thing he did. Even when he immediately apologized, his fate was sealed in Toronto. Josh Donaldson did not endear himself to Blue Jay fans on his way out the door the way he criticized the front office. And Marcus Stroman, in essence, got run out of town because he just didn't keep his mouth shut. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I invite Blue Jay fans to really think about how they react to player comments to negative news. I didn't bring up Robbie Alomar because what Robbie Alomar did is just heinous. But will he be looked upon more favorably for what he did than for what Kevin Pillar did? You have to ask yourself that. Well, we're out of time. I'm sure you're bored of me screaming and ranting. Please do tune in every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Enjoy the views from the On Fek Circle. Don't forget about the main podcast, the Jason the Couch Radio Podcast. That's Mondays at 6. And coming up in just 2 days, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, Facebook page, Twitter, Karen Suter, Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm the Feckless Wonder, Steve Fek. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.